want to introduce myself. My name is Erin Bell, and we do thank you, Lisa. We're recording this and we'll post it to our website. I am co-PI, and that just means one of the leaders of the PFAS multi-site health study that is funded by the Centers for Disease Control, and Betsy Lewis-Michael, who's also on, is the co-lead, and she is at the New York State Department of Health. My goal tonight, I have several goals. I'm going to first introduce some new members and also give some updates in terms of where we are in the timeline and what the process will be. We're getting into the very busy time, so it was actually very opportune today that the governor has lifted a lot of our restrictions, so that will help us move along a little quickly here, and also really gather some input from you in terms of as we plan for recruitment into the study and plan events with the community to let people know about the study, to answer their questions about the study, and to get them excited about the study and really gather your input for that. But first, let me start with two of our newest members, and it's Kathy and Ian Scher from Petersburg. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. Petersburg, for those who aren't familiar with geography, is next to Hoosick Falls, and the town of Hoosick. And we will, as part of the study planning, and I've reviewed this before, but it's always helpful to review again. When we applied for the grant funding for this project to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, there were a number of criteria that we had to meet. And so in addition to recruiting 1,000 adults and the 300 children in the two communities that we proposed, and to complete a core protocol and data collection that is consistent across all 7 sites across the country, we also had to gather information and have information available to us about the contamination in the drinking water and access to those records, as well as to have a range of exposures in our population, so that when we combined all of the data across the 7 sites, the analyses would provide us with information that would apply to all communities, even those that aren't included in the study. And so when we put in our proposal, we proposed Hoosick Falls, the drinking water, people exposed to PFAS through their drinking water in Hoosick Falls and in Newburgh. And then we also proposed, because the area around Hoosick and Petersburg also had a number of people with private drinking wells that also that were actually higher than the had high levels of PFAS compared to those on the public drinking water. We also included in our recruitment plans the opportunity to recruit people who were exposed to the private drinking well who had the higher levels in Hoosick and Petersburg and the areas surrounding that, so that we would have that full range in the of the PFAS and have people included in that. And so that really, with the inclusion of the folks on the private wells, as well as the folks in Hoosick Falls and in Newburgh, we have that full range, and we can contribute very nicely to all of the data that's being gathered across the country. And so to that, we wanted to make sure we had people on the CAP, on the Community Advisory Panel from Petersburg, and Kathy and Ian have kindly agreed to join us. And I will be, as soon as we can find a date, I will be coming out to Petersburg. I haven't had an opportunity to go there yet to speak to the CA committee that they have. And next week, actually, I'll be in Hoosick Falls, or via Zoom with Hoosick Falls and the CPWG committee. So I'm about to launch my summer tour and get to know the communities even more. So I'm looking forward to that. So are there any questions on that? Okay, so what I do want to give some brief updates on what has been happening as we plan for the launch of the study, and where in particular I will need all of your help. We have signed lease agreements with 2 clinic sites, one at 140 Main Street in Hoosick Falls, which is the old medical provider's office, an old house right in downtown, and the other at 327 Fullerton Avenue in Newburgh, which is close to the school area. As I mentioned at several meetings ago, Research Triangle Institute is a scientific group that we have subcontracted with, and they will help us in both communities do the data collection, hire the staff, and oversee the data collection and biological sample collection at the 2 sites. They have extensive experience. They did the World Trade Center studies with 70,000 New Yorkers that were enrolled into that study. So we were very excited to work with them, and they are also working with the sites in Pennsylvania and Michigan. So it's actually very helpful because we can coordinate and really benefit from their experience. And just before the meeting, I actually forwarded to all of you the first job announcements that are coming out. We have asked that we hire local people to help with our data collection. And so the site manager positions were just advertised, one for Newburgh and one for Hoosick Falls. And I'm going to stop for a moment and ask Suzanne to give you an update on that job description and kind of the process in terms of hiring additional people and what will happen at the clinic offices. So Suzanne, I'll stop and let you pick up.
Great. Thanks, Erin. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Suzanne Triplett. I am a study director at RTI. I've been with RTI for over 20 years, and I've worked on a lot of environmental exposure studies, both for state groups and the CDC. We are working very closely with Erin and her team on setting up the site offices. So we're really excited about that right now. As Erin mentioned, and she already gave the locations of the site offices, but what we're planning this month is to hire our study office site managers. And we're looking for really individuals who've had experience managing doctors' offices, physicians' offices. That's a great skill set for what they're going to be doing for the multi-site study. For this position, we typically bring on our site office managers several months in advance of the launch before we hire our other positions for these site offices. And the other positions will include phlebotomists for the blood draws, lab assistants. We will also be hiring research associates, which are really our field interviewing staff. So when participants come into the office, they will be asked to answer questions, a lot of health questions, and our field staff will be responsible for administering those questions to the study participants. In addition, we'll be hiring several clinical interviewers as well. So for children who are eligible between the ages of 5 and 17, you will be hearing, sorry for the background noise, but they will be administering neurobehavioral assessments to those children. The clinical interviewers will be. So we'll be hiring for that position as well. And we're excited about that. I think that we are still planning on a September launch in our clinics. We'll be hiring for those other positions in August, early August. We'll be training in mid-August, and our site office clinics for both New York, for Pennsylvania, and for Michigan, we're targeting, assuming we have approvals and everything, a September launch.
Thank you, Suzanne. Are there questions regarding the site offices and the hiring?
Yes, in the hiring part, is there an interview process where Newburgh people, will be involved in determining who finally gets the job?
That's a great question. So, Suzanne, how does that normally work?
So how that works is that we have a staffing agency that specializes in and they will be hiring, doing the recruiting and screening for us. I will be also interviewing eligible candidates as well. So I'll have some input on that. But the postings have all of the information in it for the screening. Our staffing agency that we work closely with did all the hiring for the Michigan exposure assessment as well. And so that's good because in the state of Michigan right now, they're doing very similar work to the multi-site study. We have 2 site offices there in communities very similar to Newburgh and Hoosick Falls. And they did a really great job of staffing those site offices for us and working collaboratively with us to screen participants. So there's a screening process. If you know of interested parties in the site office manager position, definitely direct them to the links Erin provided. It has the contact information there. And, we'll be providing Erin with updates on our screening and recruiting process beginning next week as we interview candidates for Hoosick Falls and Newburgh.
I think, Mr. Caldwell, if I interpret your question correctly, one of the questions was, do community members have an opportunity to interview or meet the candidates? And
would it be helpful for Newburgh locals to be involved in the interviewing part of the process to help sort out?
I'm not sure. Well, I can certainly ask our staffing company if they would allow that. I'll ask.
Okay. And maybe if they say no, an alternative would be, I may reach out to all of you via email and have you send me 3 to 5 key characteristics, points, things that you think would be particularly important for your community that we can point the interviewers to. But let's first start by asking if we would have an opportunity for 1 or 2 members from the CAP for each community could at least on the final interview stage perhaps have an opportunity to meet.
Just one more thing, how competitive are these positions? Do they draw in a lot of candidates?
That's a great question. For the site office manager position, it's kind of localized and specific to really having experience running offices, which, hopefully we'll have a handful of very qualified candidates. I'm hoping maybe some people took time off on COVID potentially, and really this flexible schedule appeals to them. They want to get back into an office setting. So, that hopefully will have, 4 to 5 great candidates to choose from, and then we'll conduct the interviews and make the decision. We expect in July to have that position fulfilled, early to mid-July.
And that person will also help hire the staff that will do the data collection. Based on experience hiring staff to do data collection, I think that in addition to, obviously the phlebotomist has to have very specific training and approvals. The other staff to do the neurobehavioral assessments and to do the questionnaire collections and processing and consent forms and things like that, they will be provided with the training, as Suzanne mentioned, and the key there is finding not only someone who's comfortable with that type of language and interacting with people, but someone who understands the attention to detail, because there's a very specific protocol that has to be followed to meet research requirements. And so that we can get the standard level of data we would need to be able to do the analyses. So those will be important. But at the same time, we should hopefully have with both communities people, especially with some of the students that might be in some of our associate programs at HVCC, for example, or at Orange County Community College, that would be good candidates. So I'm excited. I think that'll be particularly helpful. And those positions might be particularly important if we could have a community member meet or have some interaction in the interview process. I think that might be helpful if Frontline would allow that. Mr. Lawson.
Yeah, I just had a question. I'm just curious. Do you view this position more of a transactional, someone just operating an office, or is there more that you're looking for? Because just interesting to me that the minimum qualifications or education, a high school diploma, and it seems like this office or this position is a pretty dynamic position, unless it's just purely transactional, like they're showing up at an office and they're helping people to operate a sort of like a medical office, as you mentioned. Can you share a little bit about like when this position, like who do you envision in this position, and what kinds of skill set? Because it seems to me to be a lot more than just high school diploma-ish, but maybe I'm missing something.
Yep, we lost you, Suzanne.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. A lot of our field positions, we intentionally do that. We often look for a lot of field experience on these studies, and our pay rates are for these positions higher. Definitely part of the community is what we're looking for. Usually these individuals are well connected and in their communities. They have a lot of experience with biomonitoring tasks as well. Our Michigan site office managers, it is very administrative, the position. You know, there's a lot of management of staff, of screening of staff. Typically our site office managers have 20+ years of experience, some varied backgrounds, but they're well qualified. And we're also looking for this person, there's a fair amount of flexibility. There's a lot of things that they do have to do, as you could tell, in this position. And they will be doing a lot of work dealing with the community as well, if that makes sense. So this will be probably the first person they see, participants checking into the office. This person will also be doing a little bit of everything, not only with the staff, but outreach to the community. For instance, in the Michigan work that we're doing right now, they're just finishing up a door knocking campaign. So that is not site office staff per se, but the enrollment's a little light. And so often they're at community meetings or they're coordinating some additional outreach for us to help with, because it is site specific and local. So it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see the candidates that I've received to review on this. If we need to tweak that job description, we will, but that served us well in the Michigan site offices and smaller communities, especially where we want to open the net wide, a little bit wider for these positions.
I think too, and I've forgotten what the job title is, but we will also be hiring for each site. I would call him a study coordinator, but it's the person that would helps collect data, but also has a little bit more experience.
It's a research associate position, and clinical interviewers will be working in the site office. Lab assistants will be there, the phlebotomists. So they all have very specialized roles, and those job descriptions will come out probably at the end of this month. So we'll have plenty of time to recruit for those positions. Each site office will have, probably to start with, 4 to 5 staff members. And that's what the other multi-site studies in Colorado and some of the other places are also starting at that level for the local staff at their site offices right now.
Yes.
So yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that in one of the other sites that they are doing a door knocking campaign. Was there any thought given to having an intentional sort of participant recruiter as a part of the staff and the team? Because I see everything else is covered, but it seems like if you're having struggles or difficulty, when I do this work, it's like kind of mandatory that we have someone whose sole responsibility is to bring people into the doors, because if you don't have people in the doors, all these other people are sitting there twiddling their thumbs. So was there any thought given?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And New Jersey's doing something similar. So the structure of this, well, we have talked about one thing, and let me give a bit of a backdrop for those who might not know, the way this study is set up for all the sites is that we invite people get an invitation to contact us, and then there's an eligibility screener that we have to conduct with that individual. And if they meet the eligibility criteria, we can then enroll them and schedule their interview. So there's an extra step in here that's unusual. It's not just we can't just, typically I would just send a recruitment letter and ask people to enroll, but in this case, we have to ask them to conduct this screener first, and then we can schedule them. So what we've talked about is having some events where people who have received, and we haven't obviously worked out any of these details because we wanted to, this is one of the things we wanted to discuss with you tonight, is where we have staff come down and have events where we're at a table with our laptops and we can conduct that screener and schedule people on the spot. It doesn't mean they do the clinic visit that day. We could talk about that, but we would actually do the screener, and those who are eligible would then schedule an interview. And we've talked about doing that. We could do that if there was a church dinner or a community event or something, that we could come down and talk about the study. And if people were in our catchment area for being invited to the study, we could do the eligibility screener and enroll them that way. So that is one thing we've talked about, as opposed to knocking on doors. Now, one of the reasons most of the sites we had stopped that mindset was because of COVID. We knew, when we were starting to make these plans, COVID was in full force. And so we weren't sure what we were going to be allowed to do, but it does sound like we could at least do that. But another option is door knocking. I mean, we could send people out, and if we know that we're recruiting people from the neighborhood, and particularly if there are multifamily homes, so if there are apartments or duplexes, and we want to, and the reason I bring that up is sometimes mail doesn't always get to where it needs to go, even though we try to get those invitations to people there, and we could door knock and answer questions and do that screener and get people scheduled. So that is something we can work out.
Just one thing to consider possibly is the intentional community engagement, as opposed to, I guess, the traditional door knocking or mailings. There are other ways that you can engage the community to get at what you want. So I think what would be helpful, and I like your process, is getting that person. But as I think are discussing, that person is a pretty dynamic, engaged individual in the community. And so that person might be able to find those little fault lines and connectivity. Because there's always, in every community, there's always somebody that can speak to somebody that can get everybody. And so I think that's the case probably here in Newburgh as well. So
do you have you hired someone like that before for your other projects?
Yeah.
Do you have a job description you could send to me?
Yes. Okay.
Why don't you and I can discuss that, and as we look at budgets and planning, that'll just help me, and then we can maybe put forth some ideas. But that's helpful. So thank you. Okay.
See, Lisa, I just wanted to throw out, it looks like Aura has a hand raised.
I was just about to say, yep.
Yeah, okay, great. I didn't know if you saw it.
Thank you, Elisa. No, but definitely do that. Aura.
Yeah, I just have a question regarding the hiring process. I know you will be looking for someone that is from the community, but is there a kind of a policy or something, guidelines that will be followed to make sure that the people that do get hired reflect community members, thinking about race equity and cultural competency. So I'm wondering if there are any guidelines that will be followed through this hiring process.
That's an excellent question. So Suzanne, what are the policies for Frontline?
I'm sure they have equity policies, and we look for that too. I mean, RTI has all of the final say and decisions on staffing. So we work closely with Frontline, and I think that hopefully, both with the policies at RTI and Frontline, that inclusivity that's in a lot of our language as an employer comes through and is welcoming to the community. We certainly want that and want as much as we can for the site office staff to reflect the community. And so we'll take that into consideration. That's something always Erin has been really passionate about, especially in Newburgh and Hoosick Falls and in all of our sites, really, that we're, you know, inclusive in that way. So that will be a consideration when we make final decisions for the site office staff.
And that would be another way if Frontline asks why the CAP is requesting that if possible, they would like to meet some of the finalists, that would be a contributing factor. But I would assume typically, I mean, some of the real basic things that we all do and are required to do would standardize review criteria, standardize interview questions. You know, we look.
They handle all of that. They do a lot of these studies also for the Department of Defense. And for other huge federal agencies, and have to follow those guidelines. So that's something that definitely Erin and I will be very sensitive to for Newburgh and Hoosick Falls and our other site locations.
I think I read too that Frontline is a women's own business, is a woman's own business.
It is.
Yes,
It's a small business, a woman-owned business,
yes,
veteran owned.
The assumption is they'll be up on this, but it's always good to double check. So that'd be great to share that with the CAP once we have that information.
Yes, I will.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so the timeline, as Suzanne mentioned, we would hope to start our first clinic visits the beginning of September. And that means, you know, these letters or these recruitment invites that people contact our office, and just to, it'll be the staff here at the University at Albany that will be fielding those calls. We have a email specified for the study, and we have staff designated with our own designated phone number and text cell phone number and a 1-800 number. All of that is just very specific to the study with my staff that are on full time, and we have staff that are both speak Spanish as well as Haitian Creole that will be available. They will call to do these screeners and then potentially and do the scheduling, and then we share that information with the folks at the 2 clinic sites, and then obviously we may have these events. So this means that to do this screening and scheduling, that we will start sending invitations to people ideally by the beginning of August. Right now, we're very heavy in the midst of getting final approvals. Everything that we do has to be reviewed by ethics boards and every communication, and we're designing some recruitment information that we will share to you for feedback once we have another round of edits to do here, and getting those final approvals. But our hope would be end of July, beginning of August, we would start mailing letters. They won't all go out at once. We'll send in each community about 150 a week, and keep sending them out until we hit our enrollment marks as people contact us. Throughout the process, we'll send an initial mailing. We'll send the invitation flyer that has this information on how to contact us. We also send what we call a language card that will provide information so that for those who are more comfortable with Spanish or Haitian Creole, they know how to contact us, and it's a very short postcard size information, and it's in those languages so that it's very easy to follow. Because in these initial mailings, we won't know someone's preferred language until we have contact with them. And then we will follow up with reminder postcards to people we haven't heard from. And so I can actually show you, I have 2 quick things I was going to show you. So for example, this is just a reminder postcard that would be traditionally sent out, letting folks know that, you know, we are starting to recruit, and if people who are interested want to please contact us. And again, we're anticipating throughout this whole process, starting now all the way through summer and fall, that we would actually also be in the communities answering questions, talking to people about the study. You know, again, perhaps some of these events where we're actually doing the screener there in person. And so this will be an ongoing rolling process. And we have 3 different postcards that we can send as people, and this is all along the same theme. To do that. And we'll have other signs and flyers. Lorene had asked for Hoosick Falls to have lawn signs, which are big right now. So here's a mock-up of a lawn sign. And Newburgh, we can, you know, we weren't sure lawn signs, we can certainly make them for Newburgh, but we can also do a variation on this banner and make a banner or other things. You know, these are just ideas, and we'll send you a little packet for you to review and think about. But these are just some of our ideas. And Gina helped us with this. And this is the big, you know, my kids know what these things are, this QR code. And this goes right to our study website. And our study website will have frequent questions. We'll outline what are the steps of the study, what's the purpose of the study. And so we'll make heavy use of that, as well as our Facebook page to help us with those things.
Erin, did you want to share anything about the media campaign, or?
That's what I was just about to.
Oh, okay, great. Sorry.
It's okay. So the other thing we had a meeting this week with a media and marketing company who will help us generate, and I don't know that, and Gina can give us the vocabulary, but this is to help provide really a lot like this lawn sign. It's letting people know the study is coming, and that to look for invitations in the mail, and it'll be we've asked them to be very focused and directed to the community. So what we do in Hoosick Falls will be different than what we do in Newburgh, and within Newburgh, there are neighborhoods that we want to pay special attention to and make sure we reach people, and that we reach the Spanish speaking radios and media and all that. So they're putting together a plan for us, and this would be a media campaign that would also primarily occur over the summer months as we generate excitement and information about the study and let people know that it's coming, and to do that. So Gina's helped us set that up, and we have that meeting. We had that initial meeting, and they're drafting up a plan for us. And again, we'll provide you with that so you can see what they're proposing once we have that in hand, and we'll share that and get feedback from you. So that's one other thing that will be happening with that, as we also simultaneously update the website and our Facebook pages, and really add a Twitter account. And Lorene, we have actually, the national study has put together a social media communication packet that would include for our CAT members that have Twitter accounts, to give you some key messaging ideas and thoughts on that, so we can, so that's another aspect that we'll be talking about. What I wanted to, 2 things that I want to talk about tonight with all of you here was to start to get ideas, and I've already, Mr. Lawson and I have had a couple of phone calls already discussing about the specific to Newburgh, but I also wanted to open it up. Ideas for both having meetings and sessions where we meet with the communities, and your ideas for that, and where you think people are. Do they want a webinar? Do they want in-person contact? Who should do it? I mean, I'm happy to do it, but it also doesn't just need to be me. I mean, we could have, and in fact, I would very much like to have partners from the CAP or other local folks who are passionate about this issue, and we can talk about a number of things. Where in Newburgh, we've talked about having some joint events with the CAP and the RAB, which is the group that Mr. Lawson and Mr. Caldwell helped to lead, and related to the military base and the remediation efforts related to the exposures there. So I wanted to talk about, your ideas for events and how we should do this, the in-person or over Zoom events. And then for each community, we would like to have, we call it a launch. So usually, you know, pre-pandemic world, when a study launches or we begin to have kind of like an opening of a new business, it's the same thing where we have a big event with community leaders and families and whoever else, and we launch the study. And again, it's an opportunity, having a number of people together to talk about the study and to say we're officially started. So it's like a ribbon cutting ceremony. So some thoughts and feedback on that, what may or may not work in the communities. So
Erin, I have a question as far as the media part goes. Is it possible, I mean, Zoom meetings and all that aside, would it be easier, or at least at some sort of ease, for someone either from, you know, from UAlbany or the group or whatever, do like a quick less than 5-minute YouTube video just explaining the site study?
Yeah.
Because that would be easy. Everybody will watch something versus read something.
Yeah.
So we could post like on Facebook and Twitter and all that, a little informational video about the study.
Yeah.
You know, like a less than 5-minute or however long it takes kind of thing.
Yeah.
Those seem to get enormous responses if people can just click and watch.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. I would just suggest that you think about doing one that is like really short, like have a 45-second and then have like a 1.5 minutes and then have your full 5 minutes, because you'd be really surprised at you know, how many people won't hang in there for the full 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. And I almost think, and Suzanne will know, I think New Hampshire did the New Hampshire's doing a study now, and I think they did one that was animated. Am I remembering that right?
That's correct, Erin. They did a animated. It's a little more involved to do all those images, but it was. I'm happy to share the link to that for the beef study. We'll be doing something similar for that. A short video for Pennsylvania. We have not put that together yet. I don't know that it will be animated, but it's a helpful video to watch, and it might be helpful for this CAP. I know Pennsylvania CAP is doing this too, is looking at a few of the study kickoff meetings for peace for us, just to get ideas about what they felt worked well for that study, what resonated, and did not resonate. And when you watch these things, we learn, all of the sites learn from each other as we're going along. So that's something that our Pennsylvania CAP has been doing for us that has been helpful, just to get their feedback and reaction to another site launching, what they liked and what they didn't like.
Did they have the researchers do it, or are they thinking of having or are they going to have people from the community do the videos, or both?
So for Pennsylvania, our communications group is going to do a short video once we have the site offices more established. We'll be doing that. But you can definitely do these videos through the community. That would work as well, just to show them what the actual site office looks like. Because when you watch the piece video, it's animated. And so, you know, it looks a little different.
Yeah, I like the live action, and I'll tell you a little bit about our experience, but let me ask, Ed has his hand up, so
I love the idea that was just floated about the videos. I think also what I've seen that works well is tying the video at the end, the messaging to like a local organization to get more, to get further information, contact the Newburgh Highland Falls NAACP, or to get further information, you can visit the Community Qualified Health Center. Those things seem to, again, connect the community, and it doesn't seem like Albany is doing this. It seems like this is a part of the effort from the community.
yeah, we can do that. I like that idea, and we can, one thing we did with our previous studies, we actually had the staff do a video, and they did a little tour of the clinic visit, and they showed, and in our case, because we were bringing in children, they were showing, you know, we had, we borrowed some children and had them do from, and we didn't, you know, we're very careful to not show directly their faces and things like that to protect their identities, but we showed them going through the different steps. But more importantly, we had them meet the staff because that's who they'll be working with at the time of the data collection. So we wanted them to be comfortable and all that. So I like this idea a lot, and we can keep talking, and we could have this series, you know, we could have several of them. I mean, we in different lengths, as Gina suggests. And again, speaking to what we could do, and I could reach out to all of you if there are community organizations, and I know we've chatted about this a little bit, that might be interested in learning more and you know, being willing to say we support the study and, you know, to be a resource for us. We're certainly open to that and would like that. And that's exactly how community engagement is supposed to work. It's having that. These grant reviews I was just in for 2 days, we call it bi-directional interaction and having that. So I think those are all really good ideas. So yeah, I think we can definitely explore the videos and get information. And I think that's a good idea. And we have different ones for each community.
I just want to double back on what I said about different lengths. If the focus of the video is to create familiarity, you know, with the clinic visit, then I take back what I said. I don't know that we need different lengths. I think it should be as short as possible, and I think it should be available in the languages of the people that we're trying to recruit. So I rescind my various lengths and say.
I don't think you should rescind it. I think it was a good point.
And it's different messages. So we might have different phases where we have an initial phase of videos that it's still a staff member or perhaps, or whoever the group decides, but has the quick through, again, generating the excitement about the study. What is it? Where do you go from it? And then as we get closer to the clinic visit, we can also have one.
I mean, from a risk communication perspective, the clinic visit is probably the thing that causes the most apprehension. So the more resources that you can devote to creating familiarity and comfort with that is a phenomenal investment. And I think will really help with recruitment.
Yeah. And comfort. Okay. All right. We can definitely explore that. It's a great suggestion, and we'll definitely explore that and talk to Suzanne some more. And I knew that Pennsylvania was working on this too, and get their feedback. And if they have any lessons learned from New Hampshire too, we'll seek that out.
The videos would be more helpful on places like Twitter because, you know, we only have 140 characters. You can't say a whole lot with such a short, you know,
but we can
confinement of words. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if we had the opportunity to push the videos to the people that we're actually recruiting, there you'd have a captive audience that could really get familiar before their clinic visit. Like if you would send that when you schedule your clinic visit, if you sent that, or even before that, but like, you know, as part of the what does it feel like to be, you know, to go to your clinic visit? I think that would make really a lot of sense to have like a 3-minute video that kind of showed that for the various communities.
Okay, good. Other ideas?
Hi, Gabrielle here. I think it's also important to remember that you go to the pond to catch the fish. So there's events, but some people don't attend. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes when I want to do community outreach, I go where people are, let them know there's moms and dads in laundromats, barbershops, salons. The Frederick Douglass and Newburgh project was very successful in going into 6 barbershops and talking about the various events, especially surrounding Black men in our country. And they felt comfortable because they were in their safe space. So I agree with the YouTube video. I would be willing to have that video on, and then I can just plug it into, most of them have big screens because they watch the games and they're there. They're not going to leave. They're waiting for a haircut. So they're kind of like trapped. So I call it, you know, my net. And they're there and they want to be engaged. These are working men who don't often have a lot of time to follow community engagement projects. So this would be one way to get them the information that they can take back home to their families. I think that's a great idea to sometimes go where they are. And I'm a native and I can go anywhere at any time in this city. So let me know what you need.
That's excellent. And that's a great idea, and I fully agree. Barbershops, hairdressers are just wonderful ways to reach out to the community. I think that's a good idea. And Mr. Lawson shared with me that the NAACP is very interested in this study because of their commitment to environmental justice. And so maybe this is also something that we could team up with, that they might be interested in. And so we can maybe explore that on our agenda too when we meet. But I think that's a great idea. Other thoughts? Yeah.
Aaron, my first thought is to have someone like you come out and talk to our town board to inform them and try to get them interested in it first. But Kathy and I were just talking, and I think what we'll do is run it by our C8 committee at our next meeting, and we'll do our own little brainstorm and then get back.
All right, thank you. That sounds good. And I know I'm going to be at CPWG on Tuesday in Hoosick, and we can ask the same question. And we've also talked about meeting with the reaching out to the school board. One of the things we will be doing too as part of this study is asking permission, and it's always with permission, but permission from the parents for certain aspects of the school record. And this is important because of the neurodevelopmental question and whether or not a child has diagnosed and receiving services at the school for ADHD and other types of developmental outcomes, and we'll need permission from the parents to access that. And obviously, we want to make sure the school knows that these requests will be going out, but also because the school board and the school knows the school district, and they have water concerns, and the children are impacted, and so these are all ways that we can interact. Okay, so thank you. That'll be very helpful. Are there any other thoughts? So I'm hearing video, and we can definitely do that, and going to the people, which I fully agree with, in not just these big events, but just things that are less intimidating on where people are most comfortable. And I think I also heard that maybe some of you might be able and willing to be ambassadors and help facilitate the information, and we can partner up, or if you think it's best for you to lead the way and then we follow, we'll follow your advice. This is what we need you for. You live in the communities, and this is something you can think about too. Yes, Ed.
And there's the trust, and the trust is very important. That foundation of trust. And I've been here my entire life, and I have had the ability to move people from no to yes, but after they gain trust. And so that's very, very important. And I appreciate the wide net that you guys are exploring to give other community members an opportunity to be a part of the study, but also be employed. That's important. Thank you so much for that.
No, I'm glad we knew that was important, and we don't be shy. Let us know what we're missing, because we will miss things, and so this is where you're all really valuable. If and I'll bring the barbershop back up to the topic again. And certainly the video is an important piece. What other types of things might you need in terms of a toolbox? Are flyers helpful, or are they not helpful, or what? Again, I'm anticipating that it'll be different for the two communities, but or sometimes the same. But any thoughts? Ed had his hand up.
Yeah, so that was where I was gonna. I'm just chime in, and again, we've talked about this before, but a lot of the concern that I'm hearing from the community is, well, what's going on? What happened with the last test, and where are we now? What's the difference? And so we've had this conversation, but some way of being able to allay folks' fear and to give them sort of an understanding about where we are in this process. I think to Ms. Hill's point, it builds legitimacy, trust, and community. And so It would be very helpful if there was some way, whether it was by infographic or whether it was by an interactive link, to just let people know where things stand. There's a lot of myths or misinformation and misunderstanding. And so now if you come in and you just start with your agenda and not sort of pick up where other people left off, there's going to be a disconnect, and that legitimacy and trust is hard to build.
Okay. And we've started to explore a couple of thoughts there that we'll then send out to all of you for a comment. So both communities have had biomonitoring, and then, which is different from what this health study will do. And then in Newburgh, they were also an exposure assessment site for with ATSDR, which also did not collect health information, but it still drew blood. So all three activities draw blood, and we're starting now to work out three different avenues. One is the traditional slides are taught, as we go out and interact, some talking points that we can provide and like almost like a Q&A that is that we can then post to the website and also be interactive. But we're also starting to explore some sort of infographic or on something that we can hand or that people can look at that is a little bit easier to understand. ATSDR, when they did the exposure assessment project in Newburgh, did start to come up with a flyer that sort of provided that information. And we're looking at that and seeing if we can adapt that in a way that would be less intimidating than how it's structured right now. But that provides the information of how this study is different and yet a natural extension of what has already happened, and why all the previous activities are actually critical and very helpful to feeding into the information we're going to learn from this study, and all of it together will be used to really understand the consequences and the associations related to these chemicals.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add one more thing. So I've also been hearing lately, where is the Department of Health? So we have a local Department of Health in Newburgh. And so there's a lot of questions about what they're doing or why they're doing or what's the difference between them and DEC, all these, abbreviate or acronyms. So I think some level of coordination with the local Department of Health, I think is in order. I don't know where me personally, Jack or Gabrielle might know, but I don't know how they fit into this mix.
Okay, and so can you educate me a little bit? How does does the community have a close relationship with the local health department and the people who are there, or do you feel?
No, I would say no. A couple of years ago, there was some funding around health disparities. Newburgh got some of that money, but we did there was a couple of community events. Okay. Gabrielle might be familiar with the work of, I forget the name of the organization, but again, like there's this stops and starts, and so I think if you're coming in now, it seems like you have a great team that we can sort of coordinate this.
No, that's a good, and well, the other reason, two things. We're one of the things, again, people will be asked at the request of the, particularly Newburgh, but it's important for both communities, we'll be gathering an additional blood sample to measure metals like lead and cadmium and other metals that folks might be exposed to given the age of both communities. It's actually important, and particularly around neurodevelopmental outcomes in children. And typically the county health departments are actually very much the responders when there is an issue around metals in children. They will often be the ones that are tasked with providing the education and providing the sampling and the testing. And it's logical that when particularly as we start to roll out results to people, that the county health department be involved, but that means really pulling them in earlier. So let me take that back. And the health department's on tonight, but we can definitely.
Yeah, that is a fantastic,
great idea.
Fantastic. And I'm really glad you brought this up, because it's really a fantastic point. Yeah. I think that all these agencies, have different roles to play at different times with potential study participants. And again, the local health departments, work with the state health department, but we also have different roles and may get involved with people as a result of this study. So to be able to introduce the players and who they are early on, in terms of who you may hear from, what kind of follow-up, and kind of de-acronym everybody into more of a how we're bringing services to you, I think is a really great approach.
The other reason I like it is just in my experience, we're doing studies, particularly when children are involved. Oftentimes it triggers a question that's not related to the study, but my staff will get asked, or I'll get a phone call from a mom that says, I was there and you asked me a question about fish and it got me thinking. I have a concern about this other issue that we're not, I don't have any involvement with, but the county health department would have the ability to help with that. So it's nice to be able to have that partnership and that collaboration to be able to refer people if questions like that come up. I'm not necessarily saying questions about fish are going to come up, but it's just, questions tend to arise as we start working with kids, and the ability to have a partner in the county health department will be important.
While we're on the subject of kids, I know it's quick notice since we just talked about Erin, but have you had a chance to look into that MTRA Kit? Because man, we could sell so many more parents on that.
Yeah.
If it's just a finger prick, for the children.
So this is a company, and actually it's interesting. I ran into a colleague who's also looking at doing something similar to measure antibodies to COVID, and he's testing it out as a certified lab. So this is a method that Laureen sent to me, and I've since found out colleagues down at NYU are using it to do a finger prick to measure a variety of exposures. The problem with the core study is that we have to stick to the protocol that's been approved by CDC, which means a blood draw for the kids. It's which meets all kinds of standards. However, I'm very interested in that tool that you sent me, because I think there might be some other avenues we can explore with it. They definitely do a finger prick. And again, we have a protocol approved for the metals assessment, but it is something we've used in the field for lead testing and for other types of studies, or perhaps even for this antibody response, because there's still this open question around the immune relationship of the PFAS and vaccine effectiveness. And so there might be some room here. I know the last time I was in Hoosick Falls, people who had been vaccinated were volunteering. I love it. They were volunteering to be in a pilot to see if I didn't even ask. So I think there's room for possibility to do some other activities around that. So I'm definitely going to explore it. I know other colleagues that are using it with kids, but we have to, for the core, have to stick with this. We all have to use the same protocol. Otherwise, the results won't be, we can't standardize our approach. And the reason I'll keep harping on that is, and the reason communities should care about it, when agencies that are tasked with setting regulatory levels for exposures, and when they're tasked with evaluating the science to understand whether or not something's a hazard for a community, and a risk assessment needs to be conducted, and then a regulatory decision and a policy change, all of that, what they do is they look to the peer-reviewed literature, and the peer-reviewed literature comes from science that has a very approved protocol with standard approaches. And so one of the reasons we want to make sure we meet the scientific criteria that have been set forth for this study is so that the results from the study can inform that process. And it will take, pieces of it are going to take longer than others in terms of the analysis, but that's one reason why we need to focus on for that main protocol while we're sticking to the protocol that's been approved, so that information can then be used for that purpose. That's one of the goals of this project, and one of the things that, you know, people keep asking, what are the health effects? This is a piece of that information that will be important, and we want to make sure it can be used for that to, you know, help answer that question.
Erin?
Yeah.
With what you just said there, it sounds like a link from your study to the contaminated Washington Lake can't be really established that the lake caused some of these issues. Is that kind of a cause and effect is not a possibility then?
So epidemiology studies. So when we study people, one of the phrases you'll hear for any epidemiology study that's done is that it's correlation, not causation, that we look at associations. So we'll look at people with varying levels of the PFAS in their blood and with their exposures. And we'll look at, we'll compare health effects, health response biomarkers in the people with the high levels and the people with the lower levels, and see if there's a difference. No one epidemiology study can say definitively that's what caused that exposure, definitely caused that cancer, or that one exposure definitely caused the miscarriage. What we look at is what's called the preponderance of evidence, and it means when these scientists get together on committees, and I'm sitting on one now with the National Academy of Medicine, where we're looking at, we're up to 500 papers on perfluorinated chemicals that we're actually evaluating. And they look at all of the information together to then provide conclusions with that. Now, well done large studies, such as the one that's being proposed, are given more weight in that discussion. Because they're larger, they have more information, they have a wider variation of exposure to allow us to understand what might be happening with the health outcomes. But it's very rare that one study will show such an effect that we can say for sure that that's causative. It also means the same thing in reverse. If we don't see something, it doesn't guarantee there's no effect. What we do is then evaluate the reasons why we might see something and the reasons why we might not see something, which might be related to other confounding factors or other characteristics of the exposure, but it is giving us more information. In this case, the reason the multi-site is important is because, as you all know, there are a lot of different types of perfluorinated chemicals, and by combining our forces and our information, we'll be able to look at the mixtures, and we'll be able to look at a wider range of the perfluorinated chemicals. But yet you're right in that one single study won't tell us for sure that there's an association, but it can, or that there's a causation, but it will tell us whether it can give us information and evidence that suggests that there might be something going on, and we have to keep going in that direction.
I'm wondering if part of the explanation for why you're in Newburgh has to do with what happened in Washington Lake. You're coming to Newburgh as a result of that.
Yes. Because there's documented exposure, and to be eligible to, again, the criteria for the original grant proposal is that we had to work with communities that had documented exposure in their public drinking water. And understanding, and another key component that the communities don't see, but that's actually we've been working on over the past year. We have to take, not only we have your biomonitoring results, but we also have to reconstruct the history of the exposure to the primary drinking water source that was originally contaminated, and go back in time and try to understand what the exposure was and for how long it lasted in the drinking water, so that we can better then compare the health history of people who have been exposed. And that's why there are certain eligibility criteria to enroll in this study in terms of when people lived in the communities that were exposed.
And so one last part to this is just in the recruitment of candidates for the research. information about Washington Lake and what you're going to be doing, where the clinic is, the blood work and the urine, all that other stuff. But that linking with Washington Lake, for me, feels like it's will help people understand a little bit better picture of what you're doing here. It's not just coming out of nowhere. It's
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. And you're right. Yes, we didn't just pick people out of a hat. There's a very solid reason why we felt it was important, and why both Hoosick Falls and Newburgh met these criteria, that we were able to get this information, because another key component to getting funded and part of the funding has to reconstruct this history and this dosing so that we can better understand what might be happening in the body, in someone's body. And that's important information to have. And again, we'll be contributing to the literature, because some communities don't have that information. And so now if we can learn from all these other sites what the exposure patterns were, that will be, again, that information will be important for other communities to understand.
Okay, thank you.
Just making a note. Mr. Lawson, you have your hand up? Oh.
Sorry.
It's okay. Other questions on kind of the general or thoughts on generating excitement, information, answering questions, bringing attention for the community?
If we plan a new community event here, again, this is so much different between here and Newburgh, so I don't want to exclude Newburgh, but we can do a little thing like, hey, have a meet and greet at the local Iron Coffee or the pizza shop or something. So if we did a little thing like that, and I can check with some of the business leaders here and maybe have people, oh, come and get, like, so you guys, if you come, if we invite you to come and do like a Q&A or a little 2-hour event or something where people can come in and out, are you going to bring like flyers and info and like sign up sheets and stuff like that?
Definitely do that. And you know, again, we're working on different signs, like just typical signs and information flyers. We will be, one of the homework assignments I'll send out to you in the next week or so is our link to the website, and have you play with our website and let us know, because we need to add a section on the study itself and what are the different steps of the study and information. I just would like some feedback. One of the things we're going to do is also make sure our front page is or a component of our front page that is prominent will also be translated. All of the information on inside the links are translated, but we need something on the front page that would be accessible. But beyond that, we also just, you know, I'd really like your feedback on how our website can be improved upon and what else we could, how else we can add to it. It's also supposed to be designed so that if you're on your phone, for those who have the smartphone, that it can scroll easily. So if some of you have smartphones, because we know some people they don't have computers, they have a phone, you know, I'll ask in that email. So I'll send you an email in the next few days to just ask for your thoughts and feedback on what we can do to make it more accessible. And a reminder that another key component of our website is we do have these literature summaries of the papers that have been published, and we've have links with that information, and we've tried to, and again, always give us feedback, we've tried to explain in normal language what each of those papers is telling us, and then people have the opportunity, if they have additional questions, they can reach out to the staff directly, and we have that information, but they can also request us to, if they want to see the paper, we can send it to
And I just also popped in the chat, and for anybody who doesn't follow me on Twitter, a lovely study that came out today on PFAS in your cosmetics. It's horrifying.
Yeah, Washington Post actually reached out to me, but I was on in a meeting and I couldn't meet their deadline, but I think they interviewed some of the other researchers on the multi-site study. We were not part of that study. It was a different group of researchers.
That was Graham Peasley too. So yeah, he's doing all the firefighting studies. So yeah, but yeah, because a lot of people don't necessarily get the Washington Post, and this is something you want to just kind of spread around.
Yeah, and we'll get that paper, we'll post that paper. So we post updates once a month to the website of everything that's been published from an epidemiology standpoint once a month. We haven't had enough staff yet to post the toxicology papers, which are all the papers on fish and on risk assessment and the different animal studies and the environmental studies. We haven't quite figured out how best to do that yet. So we started with the epidemiology.
I've been a little lax in sending you those this past, everything just kind of caught up to me this past month. So I think we were kind of on the same page, though. I don't think I found many that you didn't have. So
Jordan, every week Jordan looks, and we've stuck again, so it's not as overwhelming. We're posting, just so everyone knows, the articles related to health outcomes that we're measuring in the multi-site study. So again, as you're playing with that and looking through that, think about the communities, and if you have feedback and ideas, and it also may generate some other ideas on what might be helpful for the communities to have and the community members. And it might be something different. It might be an offshoot of the website. We can certainly speak to that. But again, we'll send an email with some specific questions for you. But then also if you have some other thoughts as you're looking at that website.
Anywhere on that page, are you putting or just popping a link to that tox profile data?
There, yeah, it's
It
already
is there. Okay.
there. And what we've done, so there was a group in Texas that created a link for all the papers that are coming out on all of the perfluorinated chemicals. And also have a very nice, it's a lovely little description of all the health outcomes. And so we've actually updated our health outcome language to mirror that one, so that people can look at both our link and the link out of Texas and be able to compare, to have all of the information in the universe if they want. And so they can do that. And it's a fun database that actually I've pointed several of my students to it. So it is very useful and complements what we're doing. They don't have the lay summaries. We have the lay summaries, and they just have it's called a heat map, and it's different colors, and you can play with it. It's an interactive database. So
it's like 750 studies on it now. They're adding another 400.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of data. So it's amazing.
It's very comprehensive, so it's helpful. So that is there, and we'll send that email. In Newburgh, what do you think about the idea of having an event that's a launch? So we had one for the exposure assessment study that I think was at the Armory. It was right before the shutdown. It was the last trip I made, actually. And then I think we shut down 2 weeks later. Will that type of event be helpful in Newburgh, or should we think about these smaller types of just integrating into the community? I mean, what are your thoughts?
I think we could do both.
Okay.
I think we could do both because events are nice. It brings people out together. In fact, I was just sitting here thinking about the Armory, and the time Tamsin came up and did a demonstration with my class. She had a 3D model of what it looks like when the water goes off the road and into our Washington Lake. So the kids were very interested. They were able to, put oil and see what the oil looks like and how that affects the water. So if we could duplicate that model, maybe 20 times, because people are visual. Yep. But I think, there's room for both. There's that intimate one-on-one conversations, and then there's the big event bringing the community together.
Okay. And
the Armory is open again. We're opening up slowly but surely. So there's children there. It would be great to capture, their attention and their parents.
Okay. All right.
I would be happy to make that connection if you want.
Thank you.
I would agree. Both and then expand, right? So not just the Armory. I think every water event that we've had has touched the Armory, but maybe we can start touching some other venues across the city, the churches, the community centers, so that to Ms. Hill's point, I think both and you're going to get as wide a cross section of people as possible. And I think it'll build credibility, legitimacy, and trust.
Okay.
to not just go to the armory, you know, not just touch the usual suspects.
Glenn Hines invited us in, I think last year, well, before COVID. And I believe Mary Wagner and someone else went to Glenn Hines Boys and Girls Club. So that's another site.
Okay. We can do that. And I can, as we start planning this out, I'll also need all of your collective feedback on the materials. So, you know, I can obviously, I'll put my professor hat, we can do the talks and I can do the slides, but I think I'm hearing that we'll need some other things that are more interactive and more interesting, and perfectly fine also with just the conversation. And so we can work with you on what you think would be best given the particular setting, and what people will be most comfortable with, and most helpful.
I know you said you're going to talk to the school board. I think also, just because Gabrielle made me think of something, pushing into the school, into a health class or to another class to have this conversation creatively, you know, just taking a day or two. And also, parent-teacher meeting is early in September. Jack, I don't know, Jack might know better than me, but like that's a really good opportunity. A lot of people are in school to have a presentation or to do a quick presentation or a series of presentations as people come in throughout the day. So I think those are great.
I think, Ed, I think what you're referring to would be the open houses that
open house.
You know, in September.
Yeah.
There's every school would have one.
Very early on. Yeah, no, if that's.
Yeah, and they made me think of something, because with school, pretty soon we're going to be doing book bag giveaways. So there's going to be a lot of sites and people. So if there's information or something that we could have at those sites as well to give folks ahead of time. I think the more people know ahead of time, the more comfortable they will be to participate.
Okay. Yeah, I like that idea.
There may be a couple of opportunities. The incoming freshman class into NFA, there may be a meeting in the auditorium there at NFA, and that could be 800 kids there involved in that. Well, I don't know if the middle schools do the same kind of thing, and you know, with their incoming sixth graders, have
an opening day. Yeah, and I think
meeting before school opened.
Yeah. They did, certainly in our district, they did before COVID. And so we'll see. And my hope would be by the end of summer that they would be able to do these things again, because they're important, just legitimately important for the kids, independent of any research we're doing. But I think that's a great idea, and that would be a way to meet families and to incorporate them. And then, so NFA is the School of the Arts you were telling me about?
Well, there is an art department in NFA and also a television studio in NFA. That would be
okay.
The main campus. They have a couple of campuses.
Okay.
There's a health service academy in NFA. Yeah, so, and I just wanted to just bring up, since we're talking school, next Tuesday, the 22nd, the MBK Fellows, in partnership with the NAACP and local businesses, Black Vanilla Cafe, will be hosting a job fair, a virtual job fair. Legoland is going to be there. The Armed Forces are going to be there. The Electrical Union will be there. The reason why I'm bringing that up is because the fellows are actually, as a part of their service learning project, are coordinating with others to put this event on. And I think we can do something similar with them as it relates to this event, to this work. They're literally from soup to nuts, they're putting on a job fair, virtual job fair.
Wow. Yeah, no, so they could help with a route launch activity, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay. And we could piggyback that onto some other ideas and thoughts. And I'm sure there are some programs here at the University of Albany that would be interested in meeting high school students and talking to us, so we can combine some of that information. So Gabriella is asking, and this is actually a good point, whether or not local Newburgh medical professionals are involved in the study. And I'm going to have to actually, not directly yet, and I don't know, I know Cornerstone hosted or was familiar at least with the biomonitoring component of the phases, and we could certainly reach out to them. But you're right, and that's an important aspect. The clinicians and especially the clinicians that'll be interacting with the study participants, not only before the study, but as the results from the study start coming out. And to have physicians on board and nurses. It's not just the docs, and in many ways it's the nurses and the nurse practitioners that have more conversations with people. So if you have suggestions, or if there's someone we should add to the CAP that represents that community, we've also talked about that with Hoosick Falls. So that's an important aspect. We've promised people too that we will help with that communication aspect at the end. But I think I agree that it's important to have somebody now rather than just at the end.
I think when you have the conversation with the health department, they can wrap you into both St. Luke's Hospital and the community health center.
Yeah, don't forget the school nurses. There's plenty of them.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's an excellent point with the school nurses. Okay. All right. Anything else? Any other thoughts? We just one more update with Newburgh. We are working with one of the local taxi companies to set up an account so that if families and individuals who want to participate in the study but don't have transportation to the clinic, that we will have a direct, so that they don't, we didn't want to have a reimbursement situation. We didn't want them to have to put out any money. So we will set that up for those who don't have transportation to the clinic, and with an account with a taxi company. So we are working on that paperwork. But are there any?
Have you chosen a taxi company?
We've been communicating with Bob's Taxi. Is there another company that we should talk to?
Absolutely. I'll talk to you on the side about that.
Okay. Definitely let me know if if there's another company or a different group we should work with. We shied away from Uber and Lyft only because it'll be harder for us from a paperwork standpoint to pay that out. But if there's a specific company we should work with, definitely let us know. Any other questions, updates, thoughts? Okay, well, thank you. This was really very helpful. We'll send minutes. We'll let you know when everything's posted to the website, and watch your email. I anticipate over the next week or 2 weeks, we'll be sending some things your way for feedback via email. And then we'll set up another meeting, but we'll have some materials and things. And in the meantime, you can certainly, we'll send an email directing you to the website, but it's up now. So you feel free to start jotting down ideas as you look at that. And any other thoughts, just please feel free to email us.
Just to be clear, I can post that office manager job listing on social media?
Yep. It's up and it's posted, and so you can definitely share, and there'll be other ones, as Suzanne mentioned, coming down the pike here.
Great.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Have a nice night. Okay.